Good morning, everyone. The Mackinac Bridge Authority meeting will now be called to order. Today's date is March 10th. And Kim, if you could, would you call the roll, please?
Chairman Gleason,
Here.
Vice Chair Milliken,
Here.
Director Weinfrisch,
Here.
Member Stidle,
Here.
Member Kinley,
Here.
and Member, I think that's it, right?
Yes, we'll, for the record, we'll note that Caroline is joining us on stream or Zoom. Good morning, Caroline. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thanks.
Well, that's good to hear, and hopefully you'll have a speedy recovery.
I appreciate it.
The first order of business, I want to take the time to recognize our Director Weidrich, I'm sorry. Welcome aboard, and we certainly look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Members, you have the agenda before you. Is there any corrections, deletions that you would like to make? If not, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as presented.
Move approval.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the matter? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have public comment on agenda items. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on the agenda? One more time, anybody from the public? Hearing none, we'll move right on to the election of the chair of the Mackinac Bridge Authority.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Member Stidle?
I would make the motion to elect Shorty Gleason as the chair of the Mackinac Bridge Authority.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations?
I'll second your nomination, Chairman Gleason.
Third and final call, are there any nominations? Hearing none, nominations would be closed, and I guess for the record, we'll just take a vote. All in favor of the nomination of Gleason being chair of the Mackinac Bridge Authority, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And thank you all very much. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for your diligent service and your willingness to continue.
Well, thank you. We'll now hear from our Finance Chair, our Vice Chair, Bill Milliken, if you could give us an update on yesterday's meeting.
Thank you. Finance Committee did meet yesterday afternoon in Member Cheeseman's absence. Member Kinley joined the Finance Committee yesterday. We covered a number of items. We had an investment update and economic report from members of the Department of Treasury, Lon Chen, along with their colleagues Louis Brody and Kashmir Gankov were there, and gave us an extensive report on economic trends. The audit report was completed by Plant Moran December 21st of 2022, and Courtney from Plant Moran was also under the weather yesterday and participated remotely, but did present the audit, walked through it. It's an unqualified report, and we are, of course, pleased with that. The fiscal year business plan for 2024 was presented by Cami, and a few of the highlights are that 2022 traffic was 4,242,000 vehicles. Our business plan was a little more optimistic than that, but it had estimated that 4,329,000 vehicles might have crossed, so we're down just a little bit there. Last year's revenue, actual toll revenue came in at $23,300,000. We'd estimated $23,700,000, but again, traffic was off a little bit, so as was our revenue. But we had a positive ending fiscal year to the tune of $5.6 million. 2024 fiscal year projection, we're projecting revenue at $27,003,000. And traffic is projected up, we're using a 0.75% annual increase estimate. That takes us to an estimate traffic 4,395,000 vehicles in 2024. And credit card fees, we also addressed, and Aaron Walden from the Attorney General's office wrote a several-page opinion on options that we have looking forward to the use of credit cards and toll charges to cross the bridge. That was for informational purposes only. There were no decisions made around this, but on average, 13% of all of our toll transactions are paid with credit cards currently, and one of the issues is that there excuse me, there are service charges associated with that, and we with one hat on, we look at that as lost revenue, so staff will be working further with that. The last item on yesterday's Finance Committee agenda was renewal of the Michigan State Police Post office, which of course is contiguous with our St. Ignace offices. They will be concluding a 10-year lease with us in November of this year. The work that we have done analyzing that lease and the economics of it indicate that they're substantially below market. We've looked at other state police posts around the state. So we know what they're paying for a number of the other locations. We've also studied the market for office space in the Upper Peninsula, and we have made a proposal to them to dramatically increase the amount of rent that we would be entitled to if we renew the lease that they have requested. It's in their court right now, and we're waiting to hear back from them on the proposal that Shorty and Kim and I made when we were in Lansing a couple of months ago. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Very good report. Excellent. Very thorough. I do want to add one comment that if you could have witnessed Member Milliken's proposal and as well as his presentation was excellent that day, and we thank you for all your good work on that. There was a great deal of research and time that you put into all that fact finding, and we certainly appreciate it. I'm assuming that was in the form of a motion to accept your report as presented?
That's correct. That is a motion to approve.
And I'll second that.
It's been moved, supported that we accept the financial report from our financial chair, Member Milliken. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Kim, would you call the roll on that one, please?
Chairman Gleason,
Yes.
Vice Chair Milliken,
Yes.
Director Weifrisch,
Yes.
Member Steidl,
Yes.
and Member Kinley.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried unanimously. We'll now have a approval of the minutes. If there's no objections, we have minutes of the Finance Committee meeting of November 3rd, 2022, the official board meeting of November 4th, 2022, and the Finance Committee meeting of November 29th, 2002. If there's no objection, one motion would be in order to accept all three minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept all minutes in total.
Is there support to that motion?
Support?
It's been moved and supported to accept all three sets of minutes from those previous meetings. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, then Kim, once again, it's an action item. I prefer you to call roll.
All right. Chairman Gleason?
Yes.
Vice Chair Milliken,
Yes.
Director Weifrisch,
Yes.
Member Steidl,
Yes.
Member Kinley.
Yes.
Thank you, Kim. Under old business, we have Cole coming up. He's going to report on the North Viaduct span project. Good morning, Cole. It's always a pleasure seeing you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Gleason. So as I presented on before in previous board meetings, we have been hard at work with our design consultant, Parsons, on our North Viaduct project. We did advertise that project as described in previous meetings this past January for February letting. Unfortunately, as seen throughout the state, the bids we received came in what I would call kind of excessively high. We did receive 4 bids from 4 construction companies, but again, they were all too high to kind of proceed with the project as is, and we made that hard decision to reject all bids. So we are currently restructuring that project to be re-let in order to begin construction. We will have a shortened season in 2023 now that we have not been able to secure a contractor yet, but we are hoping to re-let in May and still try to begin construction in 2023, primary construction being in fall 2023. So Parsons and myself and others at the MBA, we did kind of a bid analysis because to see where the high costs came in those bids. Like I said, COVID has really altered the prices of everything, materials, work, labor, and it still has not come back down. So that was a big factor. We did inflate our prices going in to try to account for that, and we unfortunately just weren't able to capture that. So aside from that, some of the other factors were long lead times for materials, especially for the modular joint components, which you may remember our Pier 34, which is currently a finger joint, was going to be replaced as a modular joint. And those components are specially made per bridge. So the long lead times with our season being short as it is in the Mackinac Straits area, contractors worried that they would not be able to deliver on that. Another was being the Mackinac Bridge. Unfortunately, we enforce pretty strict maintenance of traffic requirements. There's no detour for the Mackinac Bridge, at least not an easy one. And we try to maintain traffic through construction as much as possible. And it does put a lot of restraints on contractors. And, you know, we do pay a premium for that, unfortunately. Another factor kind of tied in with the maintenance of traffic is, to us, the North Viaduct is a fairly small portion of the Mackinac Bridge. But in order to maintain traffic, we're dealing with relatively small quantities, but we have to provide maintenance of traffic for the entire bridge in order to work on those sections. Access is difficult because it is over land, being the North Viaduct on the causeway, but it's still difficult to access. It's difficult to access by water even because of the riprap that is along the causeway that the North Viaduct is on. And contractors worried about access issues. And lastly, location. I actually talked to the companies that bid to find out what kind of issues, risks they maybe saw in the project. And none of them were local, of course. So they'd have to provide lodging, transportation for their workers. And it's unfortunate, but the Mackinac Bridge is in a rural area. We don't have a lot of contractors that can do this work locally.
Cool.
Yep.
Question, how does a contractor lodge its employees? Do they take motels? Do they rent homes?
We leave that up to them, but it's hotels. Sometimes they provide camping. When we had our large paint contract a few years ago, and it was over many years, I believe and Kim could correct me if I'm incorrect, but Seaway was the contractor, and they actually purchased a building to house their employees. But it is a factor for for construction on the bridge.
Thank you.
As I said, we still want to have this project take place in 2023, but our season will be shorter. So we are kind of restructuring it. We're removing some of the scope items, focusing on joint replacement and curb rehabilitation, where we are having the issues with ASR on our south truss spans, where the concrete in our curb is beginning to deteriorate. These are things that we consider priority of the project and that we want to try to get taken care of still in 2023. As part of that restructuring of the project, I wanted to bring this up again. Members may be familiar with this chart from our 2020 comprehensive deck study. Now this chart kind of shows the remaining life that deck study concluded the bridge has. And if you see on the bottom, those two orange lines, the top one is the remaining service life without repaving or doing some smaller projects. And as you can see, the life would end in 2034. By doing projects such as the North Viaduct project and some other projects, we can get that life at least another 10 years. So I just wanted to bring this chart up, one, to show the importance of these smaller projects and why we want to continue and perform them, and two, to show that currently, because of the maintenance on the bridge over the years, we have been able to put off that deck replacement for many years. It was originally supposed to be occurring right now, and because of the maintenance we've been able to do, we're now looking right now 10 years down the road, possibly further down the road if we can do the right projects and extend that service life. The bridge is 65 years old. It won't last forever, but with these projects we can try to preserve that life and extend it. And the longer we can extend that, the more we can build up our assets to complete those projects.
Hey, Cole, question for you.
Yep.
So what is the cost of the resurfacing relative to well, first, what's that piece? And then the second was, what's the redecking of that cost? So just so folks can get a magnitude, how much does it cost us to just extend it 10 more years?
So resurfacing, a complete resurfacing we are likely looking around 10 million total when we resurface the entire bridge. The redecking, if we look at every project, so it'll be broken into the different spans of the bridge, we're looking at 300 million.
So the 10 million is the same amount of spans? Right?
Yes.
You spend the 10 million on the same amount of spans versus 300 million. So even if you did that resurfacing, instead of getting 10 years, you only get 8 years, you still save a significant amount of money, is where I was really going, trying to just appreciation for the board members about why the preventive maintenance is so important. And while it's a big project, it's extending that life further and further and further. This was really getting to the point I was making in a finance meeting yesterday, was if we can push that, just continue to push it a little further and let the balance continue to grow.
Yes, and just to touch on that, the resurfacing is really our first line of defense for the rest of the structure, because we will be, and as part of the North Viaduct span, because we were planning on repaving, we looked at impermeable asphalt mixes, which have been placed on the bridge before, and things in order to keep the water out from the steel and everything below. So that resurfacing project is really critical in order to extend this life of the bridge deck.
Right. So your point is you still have some tricks in your bag to push that big bill off of it yet.
Yes, and hopefully we can do it. We'll see.
Sorry for exposing all your tricks, but they need to know what your tricks are.
Yeah, no problem.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Kind of thank you, on that. So, you had mentioned re-engineering, so to speak, the RFP, the LET, to narrow the scope. So, without having to ask you to give us a tutorial on what things
Yeah.
would be removed on a narrow scope of project, but does it change that scenario at all?
No, so that's another reason why I wanted to bring this chart up, because yes, we are delayed by having to reject this project, but our current plan to focus on the joints in 2023, the work that we are pulling out of the scope, we are planning on bundling with the projects that you see up there that are currently planned for 24-25, and it will make those projects slightly more expensive, but in the long run, we are going to be able to use a lot of the work we put into the design of the pavement, the special provisions, that sort of work will be able to be used for those projects, which will help us save money. And since we are already paving for those projects, it's just a matter of quantity at that point. So our goal is to try to minimize the effects of this delay as much as possible, and we're hopeful we can do that.
Thank you.
So
It's
Cole,
just
the bottom
moving
line is
around.
the repaving that we originally went out for bids on will be put off until next year. The
Yes.
joint in the curb, everything will take place this year, hopefully with the bids coming out in May of this year.
Yes, the paving, we'll have some paving just because around the joints.
Joints, right.
But yeah, the bulk of the paving will be postponed.
Okay. Will that, with your projections right now, will that affect many events on the bridge for the year 24?
No, it's hard to say for sure, but our
Okay.
plan is to try to minimize that effect. As you know, as I've talked about the North Viaduct in previous inspections, we try to focus on major construction in the spring and the fall of the years to avoid the heaviest traffic periods. Those other projects, we're hopeful to focus on spring, which have an even smaller impact. A lot of our events are in the fall and later in the summer. So by focusing on the spring, we're hopeful our impact on those events will be minimal.
Well, that's good because, as you well know, the economy in St. Ignace and Mackinac City really depends on those special events across that bridge. It's a big driving economic force up there, and anytime we can work around that to save those events is, I'm sure, well received by the merchants up there.
Yeah, and it's something we always try to think about. It's impossible to not
Right.
affect everything with construction. It's just, but we try to minimize those impacts as much as possible.
Is there any other questions under the North Viaduct span project? Hearing none, I'm assuming, Cole, you're gonna give us the underwater inspection as well?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
You'll get to talk. You'll get to hear from me a little longer than normal this time. But so first, I'm going to talk about our annual inspection. This is an inspection we do every year. However, the 2022 annual inspection also included a fracture critical member inspection, and that's something we only do every other year. It's a little bit more of an in-depth, hands-on inspection for those fracture critical elements. This year is performed by Parsons, who has performed the inspections for us on the bridge for many years. Next inspection, this upcoming year, will be HDR again, as we do alternate inspection teams year to year. They were on site from July 18th to August 3rd. They had very nice weather, which was nice. It helps us perform the inspections, and the good news was the conclusion was overall the bridge remains in good condition. So these pictures, I actually took these pictures while we were performing the inspection. I just thought they gave a good glimpse of how in depth these inspections are, and that's pictured as actually Dan Levine from Parsons and one of our employees, Joe Schleber, who just to show when these teams are here and are inspecting the bridge, we are, very much involved, participating, acting as guides, providing transport, and it's really a team effort as we try to inspect the bridge for anything that we need to find. Yep.
Cole, while we're here, explain for me, when we have bridge icing conditions that require closure of the bridge, do these elements play? Is ice forming there?
Yes, actually, the places where the ice seems to stick the longest is actually, so these are cable saddles, we call them, and they're areas where the cable is tightened and has the stanchions are connected, and ice forms in an ice storm. We get ice all along the bridge, but these saddles that are pictured seem to be where they stick the longest, and they're relatively short, but they can still form chunks big enough of ice, especially at those heights, that could cause damage on vehicles. So that's typically the last thing to go, and when we're out there monitoring the ice, those areas are what we're typically looking at.
That's interesting. Thank you.
So Bill, I was thinking about yesterday as we were touring, and they opened up the UP chamber, the cold chamber at Lawrence Tech. And I was thinking, boy, I wonder if that's what the bridge looks like in some of those ice storms, for how thick that ice was on that beam.
Yeah.
That's probably as close as we've ever been to it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, and one thing, I guess, while we're talking about it, because of the circular shape of the cable, it does form ice less than you would see on a flat surface or a beam. So it has some natural ice mitigation, but it still can form ice thick enough that can cause a danger to the public. Just wanted to touch on the importance of the annual inspection. Again, it's really what helps us plan our maintenance schedule, prioritize our repairs, and we review that inspection report and really plan our season for that fall and the upcoming year. Here's some pictures of us doing different tasks, preparing grading to be replaced, installing steel reinforcement, working on the cable wind dampeners. And that bottom picture is actually, it's a painter. He's kind of hard to see, and he's over a freighter that's going under the bridge. So that's why. Yeah. So you're looking down towards the water, and that's one of those big freighters coming through.
I'm already getting vertigo just looking at it.
So this was a good example of something from the 22 annual inspection. Parsons found an area where moisture was getting in to the cable at the anchorage. And inside the anchorage, the cable is not coated like it is out on the bridge. So that moisture getting in was leading to corrosion, as you can see by that arrow. So Parsons discovered this during the inspection, and then we got to work right away when we were able to get in there, clean it up. We replaced a sealant, that's a construction sealant, on the cable band, and then put it back together to hopefully avoid moisture continuing to get in and corrode the cable. So we completed one location. There are 4 locations where the cable goes into the anchorages. The other 3 locations are planned for 2023.
So you've got a corroded cable.
Yep.
And you've taken protective measures. The corrosion is not actually removed, but it is isolated so that it can't advance any further?
So we did remove the corrosion by hand, because we didn't want to blast in where the cable is. Compared to like on a steel beam, we sandblast. So we actually went in, cleaned it by hand, and repainted it, recoated it, and we actually put some of that sealant in that area to help if the water does get in, to help protect that area from future erosion. So, and this was original. So, I mean, it lasted 65 years. So hopefully our repair will get us at least, 30 more years, if not more. Hopefully more. But
When will the major cable inspection take place on the main cables?
so we are looking right now, possibly 2 years down the road. We are waiting for. They are re-examining the requirements and guidelines of cable inspections. Kim actually participated, I believe it was last year, with a panel in Washington last year that they were touching on those regulations and that document that will help provide guidelines on that inspection. And so we've been kind of putting it off until those are finalized so that we can incorporate them into the cable inspection. But it is likely in the next 2-3 years. That we'll be
25,
doing.
26?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's a cool picture.
Yeah. So that was a picture of them putting it back together. It's definitely takes a team effort to do any work out there. So, yeah. Any other questions on the annual inspection? Okay. So this year, we actually did also in 2022 have an underwater inspection performed on the bridge. This inspection we have to perform every 5 years. So it was last inspected in 2017. The inspection was performed by Collins engineers. They were similarly on site in July and August when the weather is nicest. And again, the findings of that underwater inspection were that the piers and substructure were in good condition. This year, we actually also had a hydrographic survey performed as part of the underwater inspection, which we do not do every inspection cycle. The last one was performed in 2007. So the picture on the bottom of this slide is a sheet out of that hydrographic survey that gave us a very detailed cross-section under the bridge. So as I mentioned, the piers were found to be in good condition. Every pier was inspected by boat and also dived by inspectors. So that top right photo, you can see those are actually zebra mussels around, and the inspector scraped the zebra mussels away to inspect underneath, just to show the level of detail that goes into this inspection. And again, kind of to show how the hydrographic survey and the physical inspection go hand in hand. That picture on the bottom left is showing debris around Pier 19, and then the picture on the bottom right is actually a picture of that debris. And that debris are what were called corrals as part of the original construction that they had in place to help guide the placement of those piers, and they remain there to this day. So, yep.
So did they scrape away the zebra mussels just to do the inspection, or did they scrape it all to inspect all of it, or they just pick pieces?
They just pick pieces. I can't remember the exact guidelines, but there's a percentage of the surface that needs to be inspected by hand. So they targeted different areas to inspect as they went.
So do zebra mussels hurt the concrete, or do they actually add an extra layer of protection sitting on top of it?
I don't believe they hurt it very much. So they might actually provide a little bit of a cover on there.
Interesting.
Cole, I'm trying to understand the picture on the bottom left. Give me
Yep.
an idea of the scale that we're looking at there.
Yeah, so that's Pier 19, which Kim can remember. I believe I'd have to look, but is 60 feet or so in diameter. So those corrals are pretty substantial.
So the gray is a 60-foot diameter structure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And the pink is the corrals, and the green is bottom of the channel. Pier 19 actually happens to be 142 feet deep at the channel bottom. So for our divers to be able to go down, they had to have requirements to
Extra deep.
Yeah, extra deep. They had a pressurization chamber on site that they had to use to get that deep. The other conclusion from the underwater inspection was there's no evidence of scour, which for the non-engineers in the room, scour is when a channel bottom washes away around a pier or an object. And so in 2007 was when we last had the hydrographic survey done. 2022, very little change. The channel bottom was within feet, and some places inches. So very little change, very stable at the bottom of the straits for how strong the currents are. The channel bottom's actually very stable.
Well, you would think that bottom would change.
So these are just a few more questions by boat and by diver. Any other questions on the underwater inspection?
Is that left picture?
That is just another photo of them inspecting. So that's one of the piers. You can see some more zebra mussels, and they utilize tools while they're down there, similar to, a surface inspection where you're wiping away rust and different things. They're similarly, tapping on the concrete and doing everything just underwater. Yep. So that's a crowbar.
Very good, Cole. Is there any other questions of Cole? Thank you.
Yep.
Very
Thank you.
good report, thank you. Kim, did you want to bring us up to date with Senate Bill 21, that one we've been patiently waiting for about 3.5 years on?
Yes. In your packet is Senate Bill 21. If you remember, last year it was a House bill. This year, Senator DeMoose has put it forward and introduced it right away in January. So we're thankful that he got right on that and introduced that bill. It looks identical to the one that you saw before, but it's been referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure in the Senate. So we're hoping it flies through the way it did in the Senate committee, in the House committee. So we'll keep looking for action on this bill. This is a key facility bill that makes the Mackinac Bridge a key facility, as well as many other bridges and entities in the state. So there's a list in that bill of things like Zilwaukee and international crossings. Tunnels would
Will we be invited to appear before Senate Transportation Committee as we've done before, or what's the procedure going forward?
Yeah, Troy Hagan is keeping us up to date on any movement in this bill, and he'll have us attend any hearings that we need to. So as I get that information, I'll forward it on to our little legislation committee.
Big legislation committee.
Big legislation.
Very important legislation
Heavyweight.
committee.
Heavyweights, right?
Heavyweights.
Okay, Kim, the special events, or was it Mike that was
Mike.
gonna? Thank you, Kim.
Well, good morning, everybody. Little lighter subject matter. I'm going to talk a little bit about special events to start with. You'll see in your packet, let me get that up on the screen there. This is a snapshot of our upcoming events for this calendar year. I'll just go through them briefly. The first event, there's the Jeep on the Mac. That's a recurring event that we've had in the past. Pretty successful event. They have the Visitors Bureau has great participation. Typically close to 1,000 Jeeps, maybe a little over. Very popular event. The second one is a new proposed event. It's called Broncos on the Mac. that is Ford Broncos, Bill, right?
Not Denver Broncos?
No, those are Ford Broncos. They're expecting this event in its first year to be about 100 vehicles. It probably won't take very long to process, probably low participation. You'll see in your packet, the Visitors Bureau sent a letter, and I believe you have that. And I've been communicating with them, and obviously it's an action item that we'll address after my presentation. The next one is a Mustang Stampede. That's a recurring event. Again, it's a pretty small, efficient event. The next one is, for the board members that have been here a while, that we used to hold this event. It's been on hiatus for a few years. The Visitors Bureau and this group, which I believe is out of Grand Rapids, they're gonna bring this back one final time. They want to see how much participation they get. They're hoping to break a record. In the past, it was around 1,200 cars. It's a large volume of traffic, but they're moving at highway speed, so it's pretty efficient to process, even though it is a large event. So we're kind of looking forward to that. It's real popular, and it's such a unique vehicle. It's the communities on both sides really enjoy it. The Corvette Crossroads, that's a recurring event, a very small event. One I really enjoy myself. I've had Corvettes myself. It's a smaller event. Seems to maintain right around 100, 150 cars. Very nice event. Of course, our annual Bridge Walk, we're all familiar with that. Now, these next three events, just to bring you a little bit of a update on that, due to our upcoming projects, which you're familiar with in the fall, these three events, the Antique Tractor Parade, the Truck Parade, and the ATV Crossing, those are all fall events. They're large events, they're very popular. I want to make it clear that these events for 23 are still taking place. The Visitors Bureau is working with these in Mackinac City and Senegnas on both sides. These events, they have great websites for people to go and get updates. The parade routes are not taking place in 23 due to our construction projects. But the Antique Tractor Parade, for example, I think they're working with Mackinac City closely, their chamber and their Visitors Bureau. They want this event to take place. It just won't be crossing the bridge this year. And likewise for the Truck Parade, very popular, very unique event for anybody that hasn't seen it. I recommend it. And that again has taken place in the city of Senegnas with an alternate parade route. And likewise for the ATV, Senegnas event will take place, alternate parade route. And last event of 23 is our annual snowmobile crossing. It's a smaller event, about 100 snowmobiles, but it's our slowest event outside of the antique tractors, because the antique tractors are typically around 1,500 they cap it at. The snowmobiles are only about 100, but I escort them across, and I think last year I might have been doing 10, so kind of pretty unique event. Takes maybe hour and a half to get them across, but anyways, that's a snapshot on the 2023 upcoming events. So yeah, questions?
So each crossing, whether it's a car, a tractor, or a snowmobile, pays the $4 toll?
Yes.
Or how does that work?
Yes. Well, we have a automated toll system, so we call it a convoy feature. It's on our software. It's I set that up ahead of time. They can proceed through a designated lane that I close to the public, and I typically am out there directing. Once I get that lead vehicle in that designated lane, it goes pretty smoothly. Our software does all the work. It counts them and it tallies. Once that event is finalized, I can finalize that transaction and it generates everything I need. And typically, to answer your question, yes, those vehicles are $4 individually. The one exception to that, for the next time the truck parade resumes, we're looking at increase in those fees for the semis. So that's something we'll probably bring to you in the future. But currently, yes, $4 per vehicle. We invoice them and they submit it fairly quickly.
Mike, do 100% of the antique tractors complete the crossing?
No. But I will say, they're a great group of people, and they are very self-sufficient. I think every tractor out there has a tow strap. And when one breaks down, which does happen, whether it's engine failure or a mechanical failure, they're hooked up and being towed probably within 60 seconds.
By another tractor, probably.
By another tractor. They work very well together, very self-sufficient. We have personnel, trucks and trailers that are monitoring that. We're watching on our cameras for anything that's going to impede that event, and maybe affect our traffic. But boy, they're a great partner. They're very, very on top of that, because it does happen. I mean, these tractors are, in some cases, 100 years old, but they're restored like new. They're beautiful.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Mike, obviously it's unfortunate we had to cancel crossing for these, but we have got construction.
Right.
Were there any alternative dates that we could work around, or they were willing, or did they already tell their participants and that was just sort of a done deal?
That's a great question, because we did study that. Cole and Kim and I had met on this topic several times. Julie discussed it with us when she was on board. And we also have sat down and met with the Senegnas and Mackinac City visitors and chambers in person. We discussed things, alternate dates. Mm-hmm. Can we do it earlier? Can we do it later? I studied traffic patterns and had that information. Could we do it in the middle of the week versus a Friday or a Saturday? And then we looked at the time of day, in some of these events, the dates sometimes don't change. They always want to have it the third weekend of the month, but the time of day that it takes place, we study that closely, and we do make changes to that. A lot of times, for example, they'll propose, we want to do a 1 o'clock crossing on a Friday. That's not good for us.
Yeah.
I'll move that all the way back to 9 o'clock, and then we'll kind of negotiate and maybe arrive at a 10 o'clock crossing. It's not exactly what they wanted, but we can't affect our traffic, so that
Right.
the time of the event is just as important as the day of the event. But to answer your question, yes, we studied traffic patterns, days, times, traffic volume, and we really tried to work with them and look at changing the days, maybe even changing the week. Can we do it a week or two earlier, a week or two later, and how does it impact other events? What stages of the projects will we be in? So, yes.
Okay, well, did everything you could do.
We did
and-
really try to look at
Okay.
alternatives,
Yeah.
and that's where we're at.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Any other questions on that before I move on to the next? Okay. So this, you have it in your packet also, and I'll just scale through this to the last slide here on the PowerPoint. So this is, what we're looking at here is, as you know, the Bridgeview Park is on our property. It's a beautiful location to view the bridge. Very popular area. And we do have special events that take place in the Bridgeview Park. And this is an example of an event. This is, let me look at my notes right here. This is called the Mackinac Bridge Swim. It's a 501c3, of course, nonprofit. It's called Swim for Amy Incorporated. A pretty unique event. Swim in the Straits is probably maybe a bucket list item for a lot of people. But this group, they screen these swimmers for time, and as you can see in this very detailed, the safety boats, the kayaks, they have all these checkpoints. They have to be to these certain points at a certain time. This event's obviously south to north, starts at about 7 in the morning. They plan on swimming on the east side of the bridge, however, based on weather, they could go to the west side. So Coast Guard certified, a lot of safety boats. A lot of people, you know, if they don't meet these benchmarks, they're picked up basically, that can't finish or maybe. Right now, the event, the last I talked to the group, they had 105 registered. They're capping it at 150 participants. So they do come ashore at our Bridgeview Park, so they'll be on our property. So I thought it was a good opportunity to mention this event because it's such a unique event, but to also share that we have a permit process for that Bridgeview Park. We have what we call a small gathering and a large gathering permit. The main difference is the large gathering obviously is a larger group of people, and they require things like electricity, there's manpower involved, so we have fees involved with that. And the big thing is a liability policy is required for a large event gathering. Just a little history on special events. Weddings is a popular one over there. We also have cookouts, reunions, and just a little history on it. We had 5 approved permits in 17. We had 5 in 18, 9 in 19, 2 in 20, 1 in 21, and 6 in 22. So not very big numbers, but they're all unique in their own way. And we have them go through that permit process, whether it's a small gathering or a large gathering.
Quick. Could you define the difference between, what's the number for small gathering versus large? Like, what's our threshold?
You know, I work closely with Kim and Melissa. Melissa does a great job of organizing these events. And Kim and Melissa and I, we discuss these at length. And it's usually dealt with on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we have a set number that says, you know, 10 to 20 is small, and then once you go over 20, it's a large gathering. We usually discuss it, and Kim makes that determination for us, whether it's, you know, we look at things like, are they gonna have set up tents and have a cookout after the event? You know, because keep in mind, the park's open to the public during these, you know, and there's limited parking, so we have to take that into consideration. And then there's setup, and then is there cleanup after the event? You know, is there, you see on the large gathering, there's a minimum fee, and then we have labor hours that are attached to that, and the liability insurance that we require. I did want to mention for the swim event, we consider that a large gathering, and we did require the liability insurance policy for that event. I think that's all I had. Just to go back on the Bronco event that is being proposed. Again, we studied traffic patterns on the day that they were asking for and the time of day. We determined they wanted it much later in the day, but we pushed it earlier due to traffic volumes. And again, the letter is in your packet. They're expecting about 100 vehicles. And as far as I know, that'll be an action item for the board. Any other questions? That's all I had today.
Anybody have any questions of Mike? Thank you, Mike. Very thorough report as usual. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Shorty.
Well, if somebody would, for the purpose of discussion, at least on number 10, make a motion for the Bronco event, we could discuss it further. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the Bronco event in line with the rest of the guidance that the staff gives.
Thank you. Is there support to the motion?
I'll support that motion.
Very good, excellent. Is there any discussion?
Question, is Quincy Ranville somebody that we deal with regularly, or is he a first timer at the table?
Quincy is a young lady that's been with the Visitors Bureau for a while, and
I guess I got the
she
gender
is
wrong.
the events coordinator, and
I would have done this.
yeah, Quincy is the events coordinator for the Visitors Bureau in St. Agnes, and I do work with her quite frequently. Text, email, phone calls, meetings, very actively engaged with Quincy at the Visitors Bureau. She's very involved in these events on the St. Agnes side. We also work closely with the Chamber and the Visitors Bureau in Mackinac City. They don't nearly have as many events as St. Agnes, but as you know, St. Agnes has a long history of holding these events, and they're very good at it. And they're constantly promoting the communities. The two communities work well together because they both benefit when any event takes place.
Good, that's good to know you've got a good relationship there.
Yes.
And a local. Great. If there's no further discussion, Kim, do a roll call on that, please.
All right, Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman Gleason,
Yes.
Vice Chair Milliken,
Yes,
Director Weiferick,
Yes.
Member Steidl,
Yes.
Member Kinley.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our 2023 meeting schedule, which we've already met A. So we need to act on B and C.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if we could adjust the November date. I know that there's a big national meeting that the MDOT director will be involved in on the 8th, so whether
Most definitely.
yeah, so maybe we could make it the week before, either the 1st, 2nd, or 2nd, 3rd, which would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't have an opinion.
As long as we don't get into the holiday week, I'm good with it.
Well, that's why I didn't go the week after.
Holiday.
I knew you would come camouflaged.
Yeah, I don't want to affect that whole schedule.
So I'd suggest that we go to the week before, and I don't know if it's,
Okay.
Wednesday, Thursday, or Thursday, Friday works better for staff. I think we need to move it off the 8th day.
I couldn't agree with you more. Director, do you have any quick dates you could give to staff right now, and they could put something together for us?
It looks to me like I could do Thursday, Friday, which would be the 2nd, 3rd, or the 1st, 2nd. Actually, there's nothing until the following week, like Mr. Steidl just mentioned. That would be a conflict.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly. No, let's lock it in now.
So typically, is a Thursday, Friday better, or
For me, a Thursday, Friday's probably better.
Okay. Is the
Not to
rest
make
of
it
the
about
board
me.
pretty comfortable with the preliminary dates right now? And we can start working on moving that November meeting?
Works for me.
Okay. With that being said, if there's no other objections, we'll go ahead and just take the vote right now and move forward. All in favor of the meeting schedule for 2023, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
And those dates again are what, please?
November 2nd is a Thursday, November 3rd is a Friday.
Caroline, I hope you didn't think we forgot about you. Does those dates work okay for you?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
That works. Thank you.
And we're into any other business. Do you have anything you wish to bring up while we're speaking?
Oh, are you talking to me?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I thought that was up
No,
to
we're
public.
into the other business that members may want to bring up. Do you have any comments?
No, I have no comments except that I'm pleased with the way things went because I would have voted the same way all of you voted anyway. So
Okay, well, thank you. And we
happy.
certainly wish you a speedy recovery and get out of quarantine.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I have one other thing to add. Barbara Aaron sends her regrets on not being able to be here today, our newest member of the authority. Prior to her appointment by the governor, she had some family plans with their son for a graduation trip this weekend. She looks forward to seeing all of us on the island this summer.
Excellent. Is there any other business to come before the authority? Before I take a motion to adjourn, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday next Friday. Be safe. And with that being said, if there's no other business, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
I so move.
I'll second that.
It's been moved, supported. We adjourned. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you and good to see everybody.
Thank you,
Caroline.
Chairman.